So 3 in a row in Roubaix. All the talk of a special debut, but it was a seasoned campaigner who made his own bit of history in hell this weekend. This week on the Gruppetto, we look back at all of that and highlight an outrageous incident on the Cobbles. Yes, Mathieu Poel became the first man for 45 years to win 3 successive Paris-Roubaix titles. Only Francesco Moser from 1978 to 80 and Octave Lapisse in the early 1900s had ever achieved such a feat, until mighty Mathieu came along. The game of stones started early, with crashes approaching the very first cobbled sector. That put a few already on the back foot, but the rest of the race was about what happened at the front, and it was pulsating.
Pogačar might have looked in trouble.
Wow.
But
he's absolutely stamped on it. Mats Pedersen can't follow. Has he got a rubber puncture front?
Watch Van der Poel here. A little bit of a layoff.
There we go. There we go. Well spotted, Adam Blythe. Mathieu Pogačar on the move, and he's opened up half a wheel length. It's in danger of becoming a couple of bike lengths now. And Pogačar's having to fight just to make sure he stays in this.
But I'm sorry, does anyone else see the speeds that these guys are?
Oh, and an issue for Pogačar. Pogačar is down. He's going to be quickly up, and he needs to get quickly up because Mathieu Pogačar is just ahead of him. Let's see what happens here. Surely that now is the final nail in this year's Roubaix Coffee. A third victory's in sight, but he just looked behind, and Mathieu Pogačar's going to need a bike change. Look at the state of Mathieu Pogačar. He's in a world of pain here with 4 kilometers still to ride. Today, hell turns to heaven. 3 in a row. It's a hat-trick in hell. Not only can he stand the heat, but Mathieu Pogačar remains ice cold. It's 3 from 3 for the modern king of the Roubaix Cobbles.
It means a lot. It's such a hard race, and I was really suffering. Yeah, too bad Tadej had this mistake in the corner. Yeah, but then I just had to go for it, but it was still quite far until the finish line, and it was really hard, especially with the last 2 sectors with the headwind. I was really struggling, but yeah, I'm happy to make it to the finish line.
Pogačar showing that he's the modern great at this race, and as the enthralling Monuments rivalry now extends to another of the 5 special one-day events, it's worth noting that the Dutchman has now pulled level on 8 wins in Monument one-day classics with Tadej Pogačar. Now, that debut, we've done a lot of talking about it, and the performance speaks for itself. Surely he now has to return, doesn't he? Amid all the justifiable hype, it's probably time for some context. Why were we so excited about seeing him race? Well, Pogačar was the first reigning Tour de France winner to even start Paris-Roubaix since Greg LeMond in 1991. That was 34 years ago. The last Tour champion to win Roubaix as a holder of that early title was Eddy Merckx in 1973. That was more than half a century ago. There's lots of talk about Bernard Hinault, but the Badgers' 1981 win was at the 4th time of asking. And that year, he wasn't the reigning Tour champion. It isn't something that happens every day then. Neither was how this race played out. So here's Adam to explain why.
Right, this Roubaix has been absolutely nuts from start to finish, from the first section until the attacks really started to come. We saw before the Arenberg Forest there was attacks over the Arenberg, that's where we started to get dropped. But for me, this is when it started to really get hard for a lot of riders. There were splits, with at 87 k's to go, the man that eventually won the bike race, Mathieu van der Poel, went on the attack and from a long way back. So when he started his sprint, he had speed to go, and there was a little look from Tadej. Tadej looked at Mats Pedersen once, twice. Mads didn't see it coming, but watch the reaction. In the past, there'd be a hesitation. They'd be waiting for the riders to start. He knew he couldn't hesitate. Out the saddle, started to get going, and it was a case of all the other riders jump on the wheel, try and hold on to this. This was one of the hardest attacks that Van der Poel did, and it's probably, from what I've seen of racing this year, the hardest that Pogačar's had to try and get onto someone's wheel and then try and hold it after that. And this was the start. This is when riders started to be shelled out. This is when riders really started to come in a lot of trouble. After that, we fast forward to a lot of attacks later. We just go down to Tadej and Mathieu van der Poel, and this is when Tadej attacked Mathieu. One of the attacks, which was probably one of the most impressive by Tadej, took a little run at Mathieu, and as he passed him, he got that much speed in, that much acceleration, that for the first time, I think, ever, this point here, Van der Poel has had to get out of the saddle. So you can see by just these shots that I'm stopping and pausing, he had to get out, get up to speed, and then chase the wheel down. Van der Poel, being Van der Poel, knew that he didn't have to get on that wheel immediately, could leave a little gap, and because this is why. Another couple of 100 metres later, we came into the incident with Tadej Pogačar. This was the game change when 2 became 1, and Tadej here just went in way too hot. You can see where the eyes are looking for his run-off direction. But look where Mathieu's are looking, down here, looking for another exit. They're in the same trajectory, but Van der Poel just with enough space in between them to adjust that and get round that corner safely. As he got round the corner, no mistakes were made by Mathieu, apart from he did have to use all that grass. But just look here, this is the difference between a bike handler that knows what they're doing. He's already pedalling, he's already got his leg down, so he's not trying to survive. He knows he's going to get round the corner, and he carries on pedalling after that. There's not a lot you can say about this man, apart from he is one of the all-time greats, if not the greatest rider that's ever ridden Paris-Roubaix. His consistency throughout it, and his win rate and podium rate, it's like none other. That's his 3rd win, he's in the history books, and he's probably going on to win 4. Incredible.
If you'd like to see more from the analysis room and from Adam, you can watch the full video on the TNT Sports Cycling YouTube channel. Make sure that you click the link below to subscribe to the channel as we move now onto the women's race, because the opening part of the weekend in hell began on Saturday in Denain with Paris-Roubaix Femmes avec Zwift.
The early move eyes were on Ellen van Dijk with 70 kilometres to go. She made her move at the end of a cobbled sector. A rider of her calibre advancing made others look up, and as she got to the break with 62 kilometres to go, 2 up the road became 3. Quintiton and Aurélien Nerlo had a super engine with them, but still only half a minute on the main bunch. They moved into Orchy with just over 20 seconds. Pfeiffer Georgi, podium finisher last time out, suffered a mechanical just before that important sector. Van Dijk's power then really began to show as she dropped her companions to ride alone into Sector 12, but that is where the drama really ramped up.
Ferrand-Prévot makes contact with Emma Norsgaard, now going clear, and it's 48 seconds now for Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, who you can see here is making light work of this pavé. What a day, what a moment. Listen to the roar that erupts. 15 times world champion will now be crowned the Queen of Roubaix, Pauline Ferrand-Prévot.
Yes, Pauline Ferrand-Prévot had floated like a butterfly over the cobbles, and it was a special victory for so many reasons.
The first French win in the women's race, the first home win in any of the elite Roubaix races for over a quarter of a century. A first PFP road race win in 10 years. Remember, the Giro 2015 was the last. And let's not forget that she's been mountain biking, crossing a little bit recently too. I think 11 mountain bike world titles have gone away over the past decade. But after an impressive return since the start of the season, 3rd in Strade Bianche, 2nd in the Ronde van Vlaanderen, to now 1st in the famous Velodrome. A win on debut, and Pauline Ferrand-Prévot now has a cobbled start. Still on the cobbles, but over the border, the Scheldeprijs is the oldest classic in Flanders. For many years now, a kind of unofficial Sprinters World Championship. The race to the outskirts of what they call the Diamond City, Antwerp, now starts over the border in Terneuzen, the Netherlands.
Both races were expected to end in a sprint, and that's how it turned out. Elisa Balsamo, on a sunny day in Schoten, where the race will remain until at least 2031, got the better of Charlotte Kool and Chiara Consonni. After 4 successive Wiebes wins, it was the first time that the women's event had someone other than the Dutch star on the top of the podium. It was a familiar affair in the men's race, however. After a nasty crash late on, Tim Merlier navigated the chaos to win for a 2nd successive season. Former winner Jasper Philipsen was 2nd, with Matteo Moschetti in 3rd.
Soudal-QuickStep are now closing in on their 1,000th win as an entity. And that magic number was brought closer by Max Schachmann, who opened the Itzulia, the Tour of the Basque Country, by putting just half a second between himself and second-place Joao Almeida in the opening stage time trial in the capital, Vitoria. The German had the leader's jersey on his back for day 2, as Caleb Ewan's impressive comeback continued apace. The Australian's second win of the season was his first World Tour success in as many as 3 years. The hard work behind the scenes looks like it's beginning to pay off. Now, this is how Stage 3 ended on the road. Alex Aramburu, the Spanish champion, a Basque rider, winning at home.
It seems perfect, no? Well, it wasn't as simple as it looked. Aramburu won the stage until he didn't, and then he did again. Let's rewind, shall we? The live images seem to show that the Cofidis rider took a wrong turn, and the commissaires agreed, initially relegating him and giving the win to Romain Grégoire. However, an appeal was lodged, stating that Aramburu had in fact followed the correct line to the finish, and that the organisers had barriered the wrong part of the road off. So the decision was again changed, a huge win for the Spanish champion, and so too for his team, who were battling to avoid relegation from the World Tour.
It was a more simple affair of strength, class and form on the fourth day of action from a cycling-mad region. UAE Emirates' Almeida was once again the protagonist, this time proving too good for the rest, riding away, holding almost half a minute of an advantage to take the stage win and, crucially, the leader's jersey of the six-stage race. Ben Healy attacked from a strong breakaway group on the way to Guernica 24 hours later. But there was still a whopping 55 kilometres still to ride. He wasn't a GC threat. There were moves and attacks from the chasing peloton behind on the final main climb of the day. But amazingly, the gap held. He was so strong, and the former Irish champion pulled off the exploit of the week in Euskadi. Healy was involved again on the final stage to Eibar, but the final battle was between Enric Mas and leader Almeida. After a few discussions about who should ride and what everybody might want out of the day, it was the Portuguese who would take it all. A stage win, a first GC success for 3.5 years, and making cycling history for his nation as the first ever Portuguese winner in the Basque Country.
After an epic weekend in Roubaix, I sat down to talk to Matt Stevens.
Well, Matt Stevens, an absolute pleasure to be joined with you today after that day in hell, that weekend in hell. First of all, how was it on the ground? What did you experience?
Every time I go to Paris-Roubaix, I don't know, I guess because of the proximity of each one you go to, it's just amazing. My memory, I'm still buzzing. Took me a while to get to sleep last night, got back quite late, but the atmosphere at the start, the crowds were massive, mate, and you could really sense a little bit of a difference just because of the presence of Tadej Pogačar. There is definitely a Pogačar effect, and we can't not admit that that is an actual thing, because he is one of the greatest cyclists of all time. So there was an additional bit of stardust on Paris-Roubaix. Not that it really needs it, but it had it, and you could feel it. It was palpable at the start. More people that I'd ever seen before at the start, and then at the finish in the velodrome, blimey, it was incredible, absolutely incredible. Same for the women's race, it really, really was. But yeah, it's special. It's a special race, and it was quite amazing what we saw unfold. It really was. We talk about bike racing, don't we? All these different stories, but in particular, the stories are far more textured in Paris-Roubaix, far more brutal. I think they ask questions of riders why they're a professional cyclist, and if they can get on their bike the next day and can keep going, you know the answer.
Let's start with Saturday. French win for the first time in over 25 years in any elite edition of Paris-Roubaix. First woman to win the women's Roubaix from France, Pauline Ferrand-Prévot. She hadn't won for 10 years on the road, and then she turns up and she does this, Matt.
It's incredible. We know how ridiculously talented she is, and I think many of us, many journalists, fans were not questioning her return, but maybe questioning her ability to perform at the highest level. And when you look at her ridiculous consistency already this year, that was never really in doubt. But I spoke to her before the start, and she's so polite. A journalist butted in front of me, as they do sometimes, and she came up and said, "I'm very sorry about that." She apologised on behalf of a journalist, for crying out loud. That's how nice this woman is, this person is. And she said, I said, "What's the plan?" I'm all in for Mariana today because I'm not feeling very good. And as we know, the team only just about persuaded her to ride. So she was bright and perky, but she was quite clear that it wasn't for her today. And I said, what's your job going to be? She said, I'm just going to ride as far as I can into the race and see what happens. And well, we know what happened after that. What a display. Absolutely magnificent. As she came into the stadium, the velodrome erupted. It really did. It was a performance for the ages. God forbid what's going to happen at the Tour de France, mate, if she continues this vein of form. And she was
You
using
think she
this
can
as
win
a
the Tour?
training race. Yes, I do.
Wow.
I mean, if she can, I don't know what her numbers were on the flat, but if she was out riding multiple riders behind, riding in a group on flat roads, and she's about 54 kilos, give or take, you've just got to transpose that over onto a climb. She is going to be hard to beat, I think. I really do. But yeah, it was, and of course, for the French, the last French winner was Guédon, wasn't it, back in 1997 for the men? So France, I think, as a cycling nation, needed something like this as well. So it's a special victory.
Let's go to Sunday then, because of course you had to go back to Compiègne for the start for that one. Different atmosphere altogether. It was overcast. There was a little bit of rain about, but there was all that excitement about Pogačar. Pogačar versus Van der Poel. The bad luck for Pedersen behind it had all the drama and everything, didn't it? But again, those two coming into the velodrome, you were there, you were waiting in that natural stadium. What was it like when you saw the first reaction from first Van der Poel and then Pogačar?
The place erupted. You know, he is a true champion, Van der Poel, isn't he? And there was obviously misfortune. Depends, you could look at it. What was there misfortune for Tadej, or was it just rider error? I think he'd admit that it was rider error. They were carrying so much ridiculous speed into that corner. And it got a bit tangled up. I think had it been a brief sliding off and remounting, he would have got back on. But I think it's afterwards what the amount of power that Van der Poel had. Pogačar pulled back to about 14 seconds, didn't he? And then just pulled away again. But the place erupted. I was actually stood next to Philip Rudolph. And I said, and this was about 3Ks to go before they assembled just behind the podium where the riders rolled to it after the line. And I said, what a battle. And what a ride by Van der Poel. He said, yeah, but we expected this. He said, what impresses me is Tadej Pogačar. He said he is an amazing athlete and is only good for our sport. Breaking tradition by riding every single classic up and apart from the Dauphiné up to the Tour. I think he is, and Rudolph, this is Rudolph saying, I think he's one of the most important riders we've ever had. So a real nod of respect. And he said, I fear him for the future of Roubaix. So he'll be back hungry. But it was amazing. Again, was it really the battle for the ages? It could have been. But Paris-Roubaix throws these things up. I don't think it was the battle everybody wanted because of Pedersen's bad luck and then the crash. Yeah. But Rob, that is Paris-Roubaix. That's what comes with it. You're not going to get a sterile group of riders coming to the finish because of the environment, you know. And any error that a rider does in Roubaix is exaggerated, isn't it, because of the terrain? So, but it was still a magnificent race.
Just keep your eyes on the right-hand side of the picture here.
I cannot believe someone is doing this. It's just beyond belief.
Oh, and it strikes him right in the face. Now, who on earth comes to a bike race to do that?
So we had that awful incident with the bottle. I'm reading Mathieu van der Poel's declarations here. This is attempted manslaughter. First of all, do you agree, and what's your reaction to it?
In the moment, I mean, coming from a legal background, attempted manslaughter is first and foremost, it's an assault because somebody has thrown an object clearly with intent, quite remarkably accurate. Thankfully, we understand the person has been apprehended. But Rob, we've had this conversation before at Paris-Roubaix when the water was thrown at riders, and even the cap. This is a level above. That could have taken Van der Poel out. I mean, he was lucky. Van der Poel was lucky that he has that ridiculous instinct on a bike. You could see his head move to the side. Luckily, his arms, the bike didn't deviate, just showing that innate ability that he has. But that sort of thing needs to be stamped out. And if the right sort of action isn't taken, all it does is open the doors for other people to do the same, almost with impunity. Luckily, it was isolated, but we've seen it in cyclocross before. We saw it in Roubaix last year. An example needs to be made of this person, whether they were drunk or not, whether it was just reckless, whether it was if it was intentional, it's far more serious. But if he'd have come down and fractured his skull or something. We've got to be realised that that's why Mathieu van der Poel is saying attempted manslaughter, because it was moving at speed on cobbles. He could have face planted, and it could have been a career ender, or worse, because we've seen this in our sport. It has no place, and I hope that the law comes down very firmly on that spectator to set an example, to say in our sport, this is not acceptable.
It seems to be occurring with increasing frequency, as you say, and all the talk is that the bidon was full of water or had some sort of liquid in it, but it was full anyway. It was heavy. We all know how heavy they can get. It was thrown. He was travelling at speed. He said if it hit him on his nose, it would have broken it. And you talked about the other potential consequences in terms of crashes. So yeah, I think from where we're sitting, where we're standing, none of us want to see that. Let's kick it out. Let's stamp it out.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, it was more luck than judgment that the Van der Poel wasn't seriously injured there. So yeah, let's hope. I don't think we'll have seen the last of it, Rob, but let's hope whatever happens subsequent to this event, that we get some more clarity around the way that spectators act. Let's be honest, let's put it into perspective. 99.9% of those spectators were having a brilliant day. Bike racing wouldn't be bike racing without them. They are integral to our sport. They are intrinsically woven into the beauty of cycling. But that sort of behaviour needs to go.
Matt Stevens from Paris-Roubaix, thank you very much.
Cheers, mate.
Elsewhere, the Mountain Bike World Series is underway. So let's go to Rick McLaughlin for the lowdown on the first couple of weeks.
Bom dia from Brazil. Rob, how are you getting on? I know it's a really busy time of year for you guys. I know the classics are kicking off royally at the minute. I've been doing my best to follow along, but I've been pretty busy myself out here at the first two rounds of the Whoop UCI Mountain Bike World Series. Some parrots having a fight behind me. Apologies, I've tried to shut them up. I can't do anything about that. But you need to go and watch the second round, which we just had yesterday. My voice is just about recovered from a cross-country race, and I honestly don't think it gets any better than that. Elite women's race. Jenny Rissvid's put on a Pauline Ferrand-Prévot-esque performance, just absolute total mountain biking from her at the front. But the elite men's race was absolutely unbelievable. The sport's never seen a race like that before. This time it was the young team, Boischi and Vidari, who ended up being mugged by Christopher Blevins right on the line. Blevins, first time he's done the cross-country, short-track cross-country Olympic double. He now leads the way in the overall points category for that competition. Samara Maxwell leads the way in the elite women's race. She has been absolutely superb this season, only getting better. Next up, Czech Republic, Nowe Mesto na Moravě. Slightly different kettle of fish to what we're facing here.
So the cobbles are done for another season. Riders are now making the transition to the hills of the Ardennes, starting with that halfway house in Dutch Limburg, the Amstel Gold Race. The Ronde van Limburg in Belgium comes under the Flanders Classics umbrella this year, and that will take place on Wednesday. Brabantse Pijl has moved to Friday, and this week too, we've got the Giro d'Abruzzo. Enjoy the racing this week. We'll be back next week with more Gruppetto. Goodbye.